Welcome to This Daring Adventure podcast, where we work on bridging the gap between where we are and where we want to be in order to live a bigger and bolder life. In this podcast, we will provide inspiration, tips, and skills you need to make your life the adventure you want it to be. Here's your host, mindset mentor, and life coach, Trista Guertin.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 8 of This Daring Adventure. Thank you so much for joining me. It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm super excited. This week, I am hosting a workshop on Thursday, which is all on leaving your past behind. By the time you hear this, it will have passed, unfortunately, but I do have a plan to record the session. So if you're interested in seeing that, you can always email me and I would be happy to send you the link so you can view that. I am going to be doing a series of workshops coming up over the next few months. The next one is going to be on September 8th, and it is all about emotional management. I am also doing a series of group coaching calls, which are a fantastic opportunity for you to apply some of the things that I am talking about in my podcast, in my newsletter, on my blog, and in the workshops that I'm hosting. So what we do is I will coach people one client at a time, usually for 10 or 15 minutes. It's a great opportunity for you to try coaching and get a little bit of help on whatever issue you wish. So I will put all the details in the show notes. And if you want more information, you are more than welcome to email me or DM me on Instagram at any time. And I will set you up with all the links so that you can register for the upcoming workshops. Now, today I wanted to talk about how you are not your mother. And this also applies to your father. I wanted to cover this topic because I've heard this come up with a few clients in a few sessions. And in fact, I had one client bring it up yesterday. So I thought it was a great topic to cover today. Basically, what happened is my client has been experiencing, I guess you want to call it, she's sort of withdrawn and she's sort of facing some difficulty in starting a new career and putting herself out there on social media. And she was drawing a lot of parallels with her mother's experience and how her mother sort of was the same way, and that this client was feeling that because it had happened to her mother and because her mother had handled it a certain way, she was therefore destined to experience the same things and, in fact, handle them the same way. And I wanted to be very clear that you are not your mother, and that her experiences and her life do not have to mean anything about you and how you handle situations and how you live your life. So let's dive in. I have a couple of points I want to cover. First of all, if you are comparing yourself to your mother or your father, and the situations, the way they lived their lives, the way they handled things, maybe certain characteristics, certain habits, it's perfectly natural. It doesn't mean that anything has gone wrong. We grew up, we were children, so therefore our brains were developing, our personalities were developing, we were very impressionable. And so it's only natural that we would take on some of these habits and think that certain situations are the way they should be. We would process information in a certain way because of our age and because of our brain development. And really, we were limited in our reasoning as children. And so because we grew up this way, because it was a habit, because this is what we grew up knowing, we feel that this is somehow a part of us and that somehow we are predestined to be the same way, to do the same things, to handle situations in the same way. This is very, very normal. I think everybody experiences it to some degree. I know I certainly did, but it's okay. I don't want you to judge yourself for it. It's a very normal part of the process, and it doesn't have to mean anything more than what you want to make it mean. So nothing has gone wrong. Just have this awareness that this is very much a part of the human experience and that it doesn't have to mean anything more than what you want to make it mean. The second thing is that just because your mother did things a certain way doesn't mean that you will or have to do them in the same way if you don't want to. It's easy for your brain to think that this is the way it should be, this is the way it's going to be, this is the way it has to be. This is the way our brain functions. It doesn't want to expend the energy to think outside the box, to imagine something different, to make the effort. It's easier to repeat patterns. It's easier to keep doing what you know, good or bad, right or wrong, easy, hard. This is what our brain will do. So nothing has gone wrong, again, but just because things happened a certain way doesn't mean you have to do them the same. And it's just your brain's way of trying to conserve energy to keep you safe and to protect you. You have different resources, capacities, and experiences than your parents did. You have a different brain. You are a different person. You have a different life. So regardless of what their experience was, regardless of what you think the impact was on you, it doesn't mean that you have to do things in the same way. And in fact, just because of the nature that time has passed and we're different generations, we will do things differently. We have different capacities. We have different resources. And so it's helpful to point these out to your brain instead of just defaulting and assuming that everything is the same as it was before. Yesterday, when I was speaking to my client, I asked her to list out 3 ways or 3 different resources that she has that her mother didn't have. And it took her a few minutes, but she was able to come up with 3 that were very clear that her mother never had access to or never possessed, but that she does, and that which could have a huge impact on her ability to change, to respond, and to live her life differently. So it's very helpful if you can take a few minutes when your brain is telling you that you're just living the same, that things are going to happen the same for you, and that everything's going to turn out in the same way. Find examples for your brain where things are different. Next, I always think the thought they were doing the best they could. And this is something that's personally been very helpful for me. I just believe that my parents were always doing the best they could. That's it. And it's very freeing and it's very easy. Once you practice that thought and you give yourself and them the grace and the space to be human and to know that any given time, we are always doing the best we can. And that's okay. And it doesn't have to be perfect, and it never will be perfect. But it can be a very beautiful thing to know that we are always working from the best possible place to do the best we can. And you may not like what they did. You may not approve of it. You may not want to do it in the same way, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be about you. It's that they were doing the very best they could at the time. And I'm wanting to share that. And so just because you were raised a certain way, you had the mother and father that you did and learned to do things differently. Human beings can change. And even though you might think right now that you can't, I promise you that you can. You are not permanent and you are not limited, and anything is possible. So regardless of how you were raised, regardless of what happened in your childhood, you are not destined to be the same as your parents. And you are not destined to handle situations the same, to do things in the same way at any given time. You will have the capacity to learn and to grow and to expand. We are not static. And although you have probably many years of repeating the same patterns, they're just habits. And habits are formed by thoughts we continue to think, behaviors we continue to do. It's just repetition. So giving yourself the time, making the effort to think new thoughts, to create new habits is possible. So don't ever give up on yourself. No, you're not resigned to reliving the past. Next, whatever they were thinking, whatever they did, whatever they said, whatever they felt was because of what they were thinking. Next, whatever they did, whatever they said, whatever they were saying was about what they were thinking at the time. And it has very little to do with who you are intrinsically as a person and as a human being. And so therefore, you don't have to make it mean anything about yourself or your life. And if you can see your parents as human beings having their own separate human experience, and you can let them have it, and you can have yours, and the two don't necessarily have to mean anything about the other, you can give yourself some space. Don't make their lives and their experiences and what they say and did about you, anything about you. You can separate that out. It's about them. It's about their experience, their choices. And you have full autonomy to make your own choices. And whatever happened in the past, you don't have to make it mean anything about you. You can take what you want from your childhood and from your parents and leave the rest behind. You can drop the judgment, drop the resistance. Remember that they were doing the best they could, just as you are now. Their experiences, their lives don't have to mean anything about yours. So you can drop the struggle and just let go of their resistance. And instead you can spend the time and emotional energy on who you want to be and who you want to become and what you want to create for your life. Love them unconditionally. Love yourself unconditionally. Anything is possible. So that's what I have for you today. If you are interested in taking some of this work deeper, I offer free 1-hour coaching sessions. I will put the link for my schedule in the show notes. I would love to speak to you about what's going on, if it's about your parents or whatever it is in your life. If you're feeling stuck and want some help moving yourself forward, I am more than happy to have a conversation with you and see how I can help. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to This Daring Adventure podcast with your host, Trista Guertin. We hope you enjoyed the tips and conversations on how to get excited about life again. As always, you can head to tristaguertin.com for additional resources and to book a one-on-one coaching session. You can also follow Trista on Instagram at Trista V. Guertin. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.